Parents. He went to school at Sabaha, then to Benghazi University.
Good morning. This is a Different Perspectives. I'm Paul Ndiho. Today, Libya is confronting the final chapter of a dynasty that ruled for more than 4 decades. Saif al-Islam Gaddafi is dead. Libyan sources said that he was killed yesterday in Zintan after gunmen disabled his security system and carried out a targeted attack. He was the last surviving son of Muammar Gaddafi with a serious claim to national power. For context, to understand what this all means at this moment, we have to go back at least a step back through the rise, the rule, and the collapse of the Gaddafi state. Muammar Gaddafi was born in 1942 near the coastal city of Saif to nomadic parents. He studied in Sabaha and Benghazi before joining the army in September 1969. He ruled a group of junior officers in a bloodless coup that overthrew King Idris, Libya's first post-independent ruler. Oil money transformed Libya under Gaddafi. Education was expanded, healthcare improved, infrastructure grew. He promoted what he called the Third Universal Theory, a system he claimed was a middle path between capitalism and communism. One of his most ambitious projects was the Great Man-Made River, a vast underground water network bringing desert water to coastal cities at a cost of more than $20 billion. At home, he built a system of People's Congress. In theory, Gaddafi fueled or ruled in practice. Our power stayed with Gaddafi and his family. Abroad, Gaddafi embraced Arab nationalism and rejected Western influence. Relations with the United States collapsed in the 1980s after Libya was accused of supporting military attacks, including a 1986 bombing of a Berlin nightclub used by U.S. soldiers. American airstrikes followed, hitting Tripoli and Benghazi and killing dozens, including Gaddafi's adopted daughter. In the 1990s, UN sanctions crippled Libya's economy after the Lockerbie bombing in Scotland that killed 270 people. Libya later accepted a civil responsibility and paid compensation to the victims of families. A dramatic shift came in 2003 when Libya abandoned its weapons of mass destruction program and allowed international inspections. Sanctions were lifted, diplomatic ties restored. When Western leaders returned to Tripoli, Gaddafi became chair of the African Union and addressed the United Nations in New York in 2009, attacking global power structures and Western dominance. In 2011, the Arab Spring reached Libya. Peaceful protests were met with violence and the country descended into civil war. The Arab League called for action. The UN Security Council authorized a no-fly zone, later launched airstrikes. By August, rebels captured Tripoli. Gaddafi fled to Sirte in October 2011. His convoy was hit by NATO aid aircraft. He was captured and killed by opposition fighters. His death ended the regime, but it did not bring stability. Today, Libya is still in the state of chaos. They have two parallel governments that are opposed to each other. Libya's fractured fractured into rival governments, militias, and foreign backed power centers. Saif al-Islam Gaddafi once represented himself as the reformist son, Western educated, a broker of Libya's 2003 WMD deal, a bridge between a dictatorship and modernization. But in 2011, he was chose as a loyalist to his father's reform. His warning of rivers of blood, I think you guys remember that. At one point he appeared on TV and he was wiggling his finger like that, saying that rivers of blood will flow in the streets of Tripoli. Became the moment his political future collapsed. After years of hiding, he re-emerged as a political contender supported by tribal networks and nostalgic supporters. To some Libyans, he represented order. To others, impunity. To foreign powers, uncertainty. His killing now removes the last symbolic link to Gaddafi's era. The Gaddafi story is not just about one man or one family. It is about power, how power was built, how it collapsed, and its absence reshaped Libya. Muammar Gaddafi ruled for 42 years. His son tried to inherit his story or to become the president, but he was barred by the powers that be in Libya. Both were overtaken by Libya today. Today, Libya remains divided, still living with consequences of the fall of Gaddafi. I'm Paul Diho. This is the breaking news story. We will keep you updated. Just to recap, this is a different perspective. Today we are talking about Libya. It looks like the last standing person in Gaddafi's family, Saif al-Islam Gaddafi, has been killed. News reports are confirming that he died yesterday. And today we are trying to give you that historical context, what happened. Again, Saif al-Islam Gaddafi is dead, and Libyan sources confirm. They say he was killed yesterday in Zintan after gunmen disabled his security system that carried out the attack. He was the last surviving son of Muammar Gaddafi with a serious claim to national power. To understand what this moment means, we have to step back through the rise and the collapse of Gaddafi or the Libyan state. Muammar Gaddafi was born in 1942 near the coastal city of Saif, two nomadic parents. He studied in Sabah and Benghazi before joining the army in September 1969. He led a group of junior officers in a bloodless coup that overthrew Idris, Libya's first post-independence ruler. Oil money transferred Libya under Gaddafi. Education expanded, healthcare improved, infrastructure grew. He promoted what he called the third universal theory, a system he claimed was a middle path between capitalism and colonialism, or rather communism. One of the most ambitious projects was the Great Man-Made River, a vast underground water network bringing desert water to coastal cities at the cost of $20 billion. Just for context, $20 billion is a lot of money. So Libya, using its natural resources, using its resources from oil, Libya being one of those countries before the fall of Gaddafi that was known for exporting oil, one of Africa's top oil producing countries. He used that money to rebuild the country. If you guys remember, before the collapse of his regime in 2011, Libya was on the cutting edge of Africa's middle-class countries. Libya actually was, at the time, was not considered as a third world country. But because of the protests that erupted, then NATO stepping up, the bombardments, and eventually capturing and killing Gaddafi, Libya collapsed and descended into this chaos. At home, Gaddafi was renowned. He built a system of People's Congress. In theory, Gaddafi ruled. In practice, the power stayed with the Gaddafi family. And abroad, Gaddafi embraced Arab nationalism and rejected Western influence. Relations with the United States collapsed in the 1980s after Libya was accused of supporting militant attacks, including a 1986 bombing of a Berlin nightclub used by US soldiers. What ensued later was the American airstrikes that hit Tripoli and Benghazi, killing dozens and hundreds of people, including Gaddafi's adopted daughter. At the time, the Americans wanted to, assassinate him, but somehow he miraculously escaped. In the 1990s, the UN sanctions crippled Libya's economy after the Lockerbie bombing in Scotland that killed 270 people. Libya later accepted responsibility and paid compensation to the victim of those families. A dramatic shift came in 2003 when Libya abandoned its weapons of mass destruction. For some of you who have followed Libya very closely, you remember that was a very contentious issue. The entire Western world wanted Libya to dismantle its weapons of mass destruction. There was all sorts of accusations, and Libya decided to get rid of that program in exchange for it being recognized by the West and other, international bodies. When Libya abandoned its weapons of mass destruction programs and allowed international inspections, sanctions were lifted, diplomatic ties were restored. Gaddafi and other Libyan players started flying all over the world. I remember him going to Italy, coming to the United Nations, where he gave that speech. He spoke for hours and tore the UN Charter. I don't know if you guys remember that, but it was very significant in the sense that he had not been invited to the UN General Assembly for a very long time. Once he came, he showed up. I remember no hotel wanted even to give him accommodation, but the current US President, Donald Trump, actually allowed him to put a tent at one of his properties in New York. That was a remarkable thing for then Libyan President Muammar Gaddafi coming to UN and terrorizing them. He literally tore the UN Charter in front of the world leaders. What a moment back then. For context, Western leaders returned to Tripoli. Gaddafi became the chair of the African Union. I remember both US Secretaries of State, Condoleezza Rice, Hillary Clinton, all embracing these Libyan guys. They embraced Saif al-Islam. I think Saif al-Islam at one point was the Libyan Secretary of State, and other dignitaries came into Washington. I remember covering that event at the State Department. It was quite an experience. So, attacking global power structures and Western dominance. In 2011, the Arab Spring arrived. You remember that. It started out in Tunisia when this young man, Bouazizi, the guy who burnt himself and set himself on fire, that led to the Arab Spring, that led to the overthrow of Ben Ali, then Hosni Mubarak, then of course Muammar Gaddafi, and across in Syria as well. We had the war that started and eventually led to the fall of the Assad regime, which just happened maybe about a year ago. But this has been in the making, at least for the last maybe I would say since 2011, more than 13 years. This has been going on. So back then, peaceful protests were met with violence. I remember Saif al-Islam going all over television and talking about how these people are, him and his father equated the people of Libya to cockroaches. They said they were going to come and kill these cockroaches. And Saif al-Islam even talked about, he was so graphic in what he described at the moment, but peaceful protesters were met with violence. The country descended into civil war. The Arab League called for action. The UN Security Council authorized a non-fly zone. NATO launched airstrikes. By August, rebels had captured Tripoli. Gaddafi fled to Sirte in October 2011. His convoy was hit by NATO aircraft, and he was captured and killed by opposition. I remember his death. I remember his capture. I have some of those videos that if you can see that are playing out. When he was captured, it was remarkable. It was remarkable.
Gaddafi was born in
So
1942 in the coastal
what
area
we
of
see
Sirte,
is something that has been going on for a very long
Sabaha,
time.
then to Benghazi,
Gaddafi,
to
there
study
you can
geography.
see him as a young
But
guy
he dropped out,
there.
joined the army.
It's
Gaddafi
been quite
debuted on the
a
world
journey,
stage in
a journey
September
for Libya,
1969
and
when
the
led
death of
junior army officer
Saif al-Islam
King Idlis
marks
in
a new
regardless
chapter
military coup.
into
The AG
Libya's
had held the
political
former
history.
Italian colony since
That's
Gaddaf's
the person you
independence
see on
in
the screen is King
1981.
Idrissa. He was overthrown
Gaddafi
by
oversaw the rapid
Gaddafi
involvement
then,
of his
who was a
poverty-stricken
colonel
country, formulating
in the
his
army.
third
I remember
unification
some of
plan
those.
to promote
If you can
unionism
look at the
and
screen,
federalism. One
this
of
is
his
Gaddafi
first
flying
policies
across
was to
Africa.
build
He
up
was
an
a
armed
superpower,
force,
my friend.
but he also
He
spent
had
billions
jets
of dollars
following
on
him
oil
wherever he went.
improving
I remember
Libya's
one time
standards,
covering him
making
in
him very
Uganda.
popular
He came
among
with
the
his
poor.
jet and
Inspired by
like an
Arab
entourage of
national
military,
sentiments,
whatever.
Gaddafi abandoned
He literally took over the
Western
security,
powers to pursue the aim of
the
uniting
security
Arab
of
countries.
Uganda
He
when he
instigated
came
the
there.
Arab Federation with
So
Syria
Gaddafi
and
was
Egypt
not your
in
ordinary
April
kind of guy.
1971,
He
which
had
soon
power,
crumbled in
he
an
had money,
argument and
he had
recrimination.
ambition. He wanted to be the
Legacy
king of
in the
Africa,
West, in
or the
particular, the
ultimate
United States,
leader
became increasingly
for
strict
Africa.
during the
And I
80s.
kid you not,
He
to
denied
this day, a lot of
involvement
people
with
think
bank
that
rolling
Gaddafi
hijackers,
was on
assassinations,
the
and
verge of
revolutions, while
uniting
insisting
Africa.
on
He
his
wanted
right to support
Africa to be
national
a one
liberation movements.
country,
Accusations
or
of
just
Gaddafi
like the
sending
United
agents
States.
to blow up
He
a
wanted
Libyan club funded by United
Africa to
States
be that
Marines in
united Africa.
1986
Some of the
led to
pictures
US
that you are
airstrikes
looking
on
at right
Tripoli
now,
and
that's
Benghazi.
the
Just
Lockerbie
days later,
bombing,
Gaddafi's home in
and
Barracks
now
was attacked and
the
his adopted
airstrikes.
daughter killed.
When NATO
Gaddafi
started
designed a political
bombing,
system of
bombing
where people were allowed to air their views
Gaddafi,
and appoint
these are some
representatives to the
file
General
images
Congress.
that I
In
was
theory,
able
the
to come
People's
across
Congress held legislative
during
and executive
my
powers,
time as a
but
reporter.
critics
I
dismiss
covered
them
this
as
very
limited to
extensively.
maintaining
I even
power
did
and
a whole
working in the hands of
documentary,
Gaddafi
The
and
Fall
his
and
family.
Rise of
Gaddafi
Muammar
created
Gaddafi.
into giant
What you
projects
see,
such as
this
the
is
Great
the
Libyan
man-made
River,
river that
a
I
vast
alluded
network
to
of
earlier.
underground
He
pipes that
built
pump
this
water
man-made
from desert
river
wells to coastal
that was able
communities.
to get
The
water
project, which
at the
Gaddafi
cost
has
of
described
$20
as the
billion.
eighth wonder of the world, is estimated
He
to have cost
managed to
$20 billion.
get water from the sea, because Libya is technically a desert. So he managed to get water from the sea to Libya. And to be honest with you, that was one of those things that a lot of Libyans liked about Gaddafi. But as we can see, Gaddafi was also a Pan-Africanist. You see him there with Nelson Mandela. You see him, he supported a lot of revolutions in Africa. What you see there is the Lockerbie bombing, when they killed about 270 people on that flight. I remember Americans went after him, the International Criminal Court went after him, and he finally settled out of court. He was able to pay some kind of money to the families who lost their victims. Libya, for those who did not know Libya or who are looking at Libya, Libya was a powerhouse. Libya stood for something. You see, that's him meeting Tony Blair. Who thought that Tony Blair, Western leaders, would go to Libya? But there he was. At the time, Tony Blair that's Hosni Mubarak. Gaddafi was, once the sanctions were lifted, all these leaders started coming to Libya. Gaddafi was allowed to come to the West, and that's him meeting Condoleezza Rice, the former U.S. Secretary of State. And now that's Saif al-Islam, the guy who just got killed, meeting U.S. Secretary Clinton. I remember covering this event where Saif al-Islam was the then Secretary of State for Libya. And he was here. He was a power man. I remember covering that press conference. But fast forward later, the regime fell to its knees. People were tired of Gaddafi and his family rule. So many things were happening. That's Mussolini. You remember, that's when he visited Italy. So that's Berlusconi, the Italian guy. Gaddafi was something else. That's Obama. Obama is the one who actually, a lot of people have never forgiven Obama, because Obama was one of those people who authorized NATO to go after Libya, to go after Muammar Gaddafi. To this day, even Obama himself has admitted that one of the biggest mistakes that he made was the authorization of NATO forces to kill Muammar Gaddafi. So as we can see, Gaddafi was a powerhouse. He was a threat to the West. He was a uniter for Africa. People looked up to him as one of those people who had the ability to rally people together, to bring Africans together. But for the West, he was something else. Now, this moment here, when he appeared at the United Nations, this is the moment that I was talking about earlier, where he tore the UN Charter. He had not been at the UN for a very long time. The day he showed up, you see that? He grabbed it, he threw it, and he tore it in pieces. That was something that the West did not like. His behavior that day pretty much determined how he would end up. Now, fast forward, there are protests in Libya. This is the fall of Tripoli. There was so much happening in real time. Africa was scared. The United Nations, that's called Susan Rice, voting to allow airstrikes in Libya. So what you see there is, I wanted to just give some historical context, a historical background of what really happened once Gaddafi fell. Libya was fractured into rival governments, militias, and foreign-backed power centers. Saif al-Islam once presented himself as the reformist son Western educated, a broker of Libya's 2003 WMD deal, a bridge between a dictatorship and modernization. But in 2011 rather, he chose royalty or to his father's over reform. He warned, I remember him warning of rivers of blood becoming the moment his political future collapsed. After years in hiding, he reimagined, he reimagined as a political contender. And I remember him being supported by some of the tribal networks of people who are loyal to his father, the nostalgic supporters who had depended on his father for survival. So he had a lot of those people who wanted him, who are backing him to become one of the political players. In fact, he tried to run after his trial. He tried to run for Libyan president, but he was barred from running. He was wanted by the International Criminal Court, or ISIS. And now I don't know what will happen if he will be tried posthumously. But this shows that the passing of Saif al-Islam is an end of an era, an end of a chapter. I think Libya is gonna, maybe this could be the beginning of also of maybe Libya coming together, because you've had these fractured governments or parallel governments that have been fighting for the control of Libya. You have one in Tripoli, a government in Tripoli, then you have another government in Benghazi. So there's a lot at stake right now. Of course, to others, Saif al-Islam represented impunity. To foreigners, he represented uncertainty. His killing now removes that lesser symbolic link to the Gaddafi era. The Gaddafi story is not just about one man or one family. It's about how power was built, how it collapsed, and how its absence reshaped Libya. Muammar Gaddafi ruled for 42 years. His son tried to inherit his history. Both were overtaken by events. Libya today remains divided, still living with the consequences of the fall of his father, or the Libya or the Gaddafi regime. Again, this is a breaking news story. Paul Diho, this is a different perspectives. We'll keep you updated and until as we learn of the latest developments. But so far, this is what's going on. So many things have happened, and I kid you not, this could be the beginning of a new chapter in Libya. Gaddafi is something else. The Libyans have been rocked by violence from all corners since the fall of Gaddafi. But what is important is to make sure that some of this stuff is taken into account. There are some things that Gaddafi did for Libya, Gaddafi did for Africa, that to this day, a lot of people look at it and say, wow, he was a reformer, he did so much for his country. I remember in the early 2000s on one of those assignments going to Libya, and I was remarkably impressed by how, for example, Tripoli looked, the roads, the hospitals. I mean, there was something different about Libya. Tripoli was a modern city. Benghazi was a modern city. Gaddafi's birthplace was these remarkable places to visit. I mean,
Libya subsequently agreed
since the collapse of the regime, Libya has remained at best in a state of war. So you can imagine people killed, NATO killed Gaddafi, the country descended into chaos. Today, his son is dead. I think he was the last surviving son. Every member of Gaddafi's family is gone, is dead. But what does this say about longevity or those leaders who stay in power for a very long time? Maybe this could be also an example of if you allow transitions, if you allow, if you allow other people to take on leadership roles in some of these African countries, maybe we would not have a situation like this, where people are dying or where people are killed, and once the regime falls, there is no continuity. Everybody thought that Saif al-Islam Gaddafi would be the heir. He was the heir apparent for his father. But Libyans did not see it that way. Libyans did not like him when, especially after he went on record trying to equate his fellow Libyans as cockroaches. He used some very, very bad language. In most cases, he was always looking down at the Libyan people. But today, he's gone. His father is gone. That chapter has been closed. So for those leaders who are still in power, for those people who are still holding on to power, this could be you. I'm not saying that what happened in Libya is going to happen to you, but for sure, you need to look at history. You need to look at what Libya represented, what Gaddafi's family represented, and where they are now. The last surviving son of one of the most powerful leaders, Muammar Gaddafi, is gone. That is Saif al-Islam. The news reports confirm that he has died. He was killed yesterday in Zintan. And this is the end of a chapter. It is something, it's been quite an interesting journey. This young man, highly educated than the average Libyan. I remember he had a PhD from one of the most elite universities, the London School of Economics. He spoke English, he spoke Arabic, he spoke French. He was very well versed with the world and things. And, but there comes a time when stuff like this happens. So to those people, I would say that maybe you need to watch out, especially those leaders. These are file images. If you guys remember, I just wanted to at least give you context of what happened and how Libya descended into chaos after the death of Gaddafi. You remember NATO bombing the hell out of Tripoli and all these major cities. Libya at one point was like the superpower in Africa. But since then, it has descended into chaos, And there is not a single government. Saif al-Islam is dead. I mean, what a remarkable end of a chapter. This has been, Saif al-Islam has been one of those people who was seen as a potential heir or leader for Libya. These are pictures that you see when they captured Gaddafi. That's him. That's his father being captured. I remember this moment very, very well. It was quite something. So to those people who hold on to power, maybe you should use this
Muammar Gaddafi was born
as
in
a striking
1942 in the
reminder
coastal area of
to
Sète to nomadic
your
parents.
people to know
He
that
went to school at
what
Sabaha,
happened
then to
to
Benghazi
Gaddafi,
University to study
his family,
geography.
could happen
But
to
he
you.
dropped out, joined the army.
I'll
Gaddafi,
keep
the
you
lead of the
updated, but
wildcard,
this
in
has been
September
the latest.
1969 when he led junior
It's
army officers in
a
Tripoli
developing
in
story.
Iblis,
We'll learn more.
Efrat
As we
as a
learn more,
military
we'll
coup.
share.
The aging
But
king had
just
ruled former
for
Italian colonies
maybe
since
to
gaining
recap,
its independence in
what has been
1951.
going on, I
Gaddafi
think
oversaw
this
the rapid
is
development of his
certainly
poverty-stricken
something
country,
that
formulating
not a lot
his
of us
third
expected.
universal theory, a
Waking
middle
up
road
to this
between
news
communism and
is something
capitalism.
that
One of
is
his
so
first
different.
tasks was to build up the armed
Gaddafi's
forces, but he also
last
spent billions
surviving
of dollars
survivor,
of oil
son,
income on
Saif
improving living standards,
al-Islam
making him
Gaddafi,
very popular
was
with
killed
the poor.
yesterday. At least
Inspired by
news
Arab
reports are
national
confirming
sentiments,
that he's
Gaddafi
dead.
abandoned
He's
ties
no
with
longer
Western
a threat
powers
or a
and pursued
person
the aim of
vying
uniting
to
Arab
become
countries. He
the next
instigated the Arab
president of
Federation
Libya.
in Syria and Egypt in April 1971,
Again,
which soon crumbled in an ugly
again,
and recrimination.
for those who
Gaddafi's
are just
relations with the
joining, this
West,
is a live
particularly the United States,
news
became
feed
increasingly
coming to you.
strained during
I
the
woke
early
up this
80s.
morning and I
He
was
denied
reading. I was like,
involvement in
oh,
bankrolling
Gaddafi's son
hijackings,
is dead.
assassinations,
Saif
and
al-Islam
revolutions
is
while
dead.
insisting
So I
on his
just
right to
decided to
support
create this
national
short
liberation
program for
movements.
you.
Accusations
And
that
to
Gaddafi
that
sent
end,
agents to blow
thank you
up
so
the
much
criminal
for
clubs
following, and
frequented
thank
by
you so
United
much
States
for
Marines in 1986
being my
and sent
fans.
U.S. airstrikes
If I
on
hear
Tripoli
or
and
see anything
Benghazi.
else,
Just
I'll
days
keep
later,
you
Gaddafi's
updated.
home in
But for now,
Azizia barracks was
just
attacked and his
to
adopted daughter
give you
killed.
an update,
Gaddafi
this
designed a
is
political
breaking
system
news.
of local congress where people were
Gaddafi's
allowed
son,
to
the
air
last
their
surviving
views and
son,
appoint
Saif
representatives
al-Islam
to the General
Gaddafi,
People's Congress.
was
In
killed
theory, the
yesterday.
People's Congress
Some
held
people
legislative and
broke
executive power,
into
but
his
critics dismiss them as dedicated
house,
to maintaining
disabled
power and wealth in
his
the hands of
security
Gaddafi and his
personnel,
family.
literally killed
Gaddafi
every
poured
single
money
person there,
into giant
and
projects such
they
as the
went
Great Man-Made
for
River,
the
a
kill.
vast network of
The target
underground
was
pipes that pump
Gaddafi's
water from
son.
desert wells to coastal communities.
I think
The project, which
probably the
Gaddafi
people
has
who did it
described
want to
as the
eliminate
eighth wonder of
him
the world, is
for the
estimated to
simple
have
fact
cost
that
$20 billion.
he had the potential to become the
United Nations
next
Security
ruler
Council
of
sanctions
Libya,
imposed in
because
1992
all
aimed
Le
strengthening
Conseil de
there have been
sécurité
these
se
cripple
factions
Libya's economy,
fighting each other
but did
in
not
Libya,
appear to
and
dampen
none of them
Gaddafi's
has been
revolutionary
able
spirit
to
and his anti-capitalist and
secure the
anti-Western
country. None
rhetoric.
of those
Former South
rebel
African
factions has
President
been
Nelson
able to
Mandela played a key
rally
role
the
in
people
persuading Gaddafi to surrender to
together.
Libyan nationals
And so there
suspected
was
of
hope for
involvement in the
Saif
December
al-Islam Gaddafi, the
1988
son
bombing
of the
of
late
Camp Flight
Muammar
103
Gaddafi,
over
to
localist
take over
farmland,
and
killing
rule that
270
country.
people.
And
Libya
now he's
subsequently
gone.
agreed to accept civil
For sure,
responsibility for both
what
Lockerbie
this
bombing
means
and
for
the
Libya,
bombing of
we
the
don't
French
know. But the
UTA
future,
airliner over Niger
the
in
history is being
1989
written as we
and
speak.
pay
This
compensation to
is
relatives
the
of
end
the
of a
victims.
chapter, the end
Gaddafi
of
caught the world by surprise in
a
December
rule
2003
or
when
a
Libya
dynasty
announced
that
it would
ruled
abandon its
over
weapons of mass
this
destruction
great nation
programs
of
and
Libya.
agreed to short-notice
Libya has
use
been
of its
touted as
nuclear
one
sites
of
by the
those
UN nuclear
remarkable
inspectors.
examples
The
of
announcement drew
successful
praise from
countries
London
in
and
Africa.
Washington and
And
virtually ended
I'm just
Libya's
saying this
international
before the war,
isolation.
before the West
British Prime
decided
Minister Tony
to
Blair visited Gaddafi
bomb
in
the hell
Tripoli in
out
March
of Libya.
2004. And
The
over
person
the
you see
next
there
2
is the
years, the
former
United
British Prime
States
Minister,
ended a
Tony
broad
Blair.
embargo
That's Hossein
that removed
Mubarak.
Libya from the list
Tony
of
Blair
sponsors of
came to
terrorists
Libya,
and
the
resumed
first
full
Western leader
diplomatic
to
relations.
visit Libya after the sanctions were lifted. And
April
then you see also
2009,
Condoleezza
Gaddafi
Rice.
eldest son,
Condoleezza Rice,
made an
they are
appearance
meeting
before the US
Gaddafi.
Department
And of course,
as
this is
US
Saif
National
al-Islam,
Security Advisor,
the guy
who
who was
met as
just
Commander of
killed,
State
the
earlier
heir
that year.
apparent to
In
Gaddafi.
2009, Gaddafi was elected
Gaddafi
by the
was
Arab
something
National
else.
Congress
Like him
as
or
the
hate him,
chairman.
he was
He
a
has
remarkable
replaced
example of
Tanzanian
what
President
Africa can do,
Jakaya
what
Kikwete.
African leaders can do
June
if they
2009,
don't
Gaddafi
swindle
led his
the resources of their countries. He empowered his people. He invested massively in his country. He did a lot of things for Libya. This day, Libya is what it is because of Gaddafi. Those who don't like him, yes, you are entitled to your own opinion, but as far as I'm concerned, he was a remarkable example of what, if the resources are used properly, what a country can do, or a leader can do for its people. Now, for sure, the death of Saif al-Islam closes that chapter, and we don't know what is going to happen. But just to recap again, this is breaking news. It just happened today. We are just learning about it today, and we'll see what happens. This is different perspectives. I'm Paul Ndiho. Libya is confronting the final chapter of a dynasty that ruled for more than 4 decades. Saif al-Islam Gaddafi is dead. Libyan sources say he was killed yesterday in Zintan after gunmen disabled his security system and carried out a targeted attack. He was the last surviving son of Muammar Gaddafi with serious claim to national power. To understand what this moment means, we have to step back through the rise, the rule, and the collapse of the Gaddafi state. Muammar Gaddafi was born in 1942 near the coastal city of Sirte to nomadic parents. He studied in Sabaha and Benghazi before joining the army. In September 1969, he led a coup of junior army officers in a bloodless coup that overthrew King Idris, Libya's first post-independence ruler. Oil money transformed Libya under Gaddafi, education expanded, healthcare improved, infrastructure grew. He promoted what he called the Third Universal Theory, a system he claimed was a middle path between capitalism and communism. One of his most ambitious projects was the Great Man-Made River, a vast underground water network bringing desert water to the coastal cities at a cost of more than $20 billion. At home, he built a system of People's Congress. In theory, Gaddafi ruled. In practice, power stayed with Gaddafi and his family. Abroad, Gaddafi embraced the Arab nationalism and rejected Western influence. Relations with the United States collapsed in the 1980s after Gaddafi was accused of supporting military attacks, including a 1986 bombing of a Berlin nightclub used by US soldiers. American airstrikes followed, hitting Tripoli and Benghazi and killing dozens, including Gaddafi's adopted daughter. In the 1990s, UN sanctions crippled Libya's economy after the Lockerbie bombing in Scotland that killed 270 people. Libya later collapsed, Libya later accepted civil responsibility and paid compensation to victims of families. A dramatic shift came in 2003 when Libya abandoned its weapons of mass destruction program and allowed international inspections. Sanctions were lifted, diplomatic ties were restored, and Western leaders returned to Tripoli. I remember the UK Prime Minister then, Tony Blair, US Secretary of State, Condoleezza Rice, and the Italian Italian Prime Minister at the time, Berlusconi, all these leaders were just flocking into Libya. Then, of course, Gaddafi was also at the helm of the African Union. He was the chairman of the African Union. So much was happening. Gaddafi became the chair of Africa. He addressed the United Nations in New York in 2009, attacking the global power structures. and Western dominance. I remember him grabbing that UN Charter, throwing it on the wall, and just tore it into pieces. Man, that was quite dramatic, and what a performance back then. In 2011, the Arab Spring reached Libya. Just for context, it all started in Tunisia, where this young man called Bouazizi set himself on fire. Then that led to this guy who had also been in power for a long time, Ben Ali, fleeing. Then it descended on Egypt. The Arab Spring, Hosni Mubarak had also been in power for a very long time. Then it went down to Libya, and of course, Libya did not survive. Gaddafi had to flee after NATO started bombing the hell out of Tripoli and Benghazi. And as he was fleeing to his home city of Sirte, I think one of the NATO planes was tracking him, and they hit his convoy. He survived, he did not die. He jumped out, tried to run, and hid under a tunnel, under a bridge, and he was captured by the rebels, and they tortured him, eventually killed him. So, peaceful protests were met with violence. The country descended into civil war. The Arab League called for action. The UN Security Council authorized a non-fly zone. NATO launched airstrikes. I remember by August, rebels captured Tripoli. Gaddafi fled to Sirte. And in October 2021, his country was hit by this level of violence that was just unprecedented. He was captured by the opposition fighters, and his death ended the regime that had been in power for over 40 years. But did that bring stability? Absolutely not. To this day, Libya is still divided. There is so much happening in that country. They can't seem to get their acts together. Militias and foreign-backed power centers, all those people feared Saif al-Islam because they saw Saif al-Islam as somebody who had connections, who had money, who represented himself as a reformist son. And obviously, he had Western education to boot. In one, I remember him brokering a deal, Libya, in 2003. He was the lead architect of the WMD, Weapons of Mass Destruction deal, a bridge between a dictatorship and modernization. But of course, in 2011, he chose loyalty to his father over reform. He was warning rivers of blood became the moment his political future collapsed. After years in hiding, he reemerged as a political contender, supported by tribal networks and nostalgic supporters. To some Libyans, he represented order. To others, impunity. To foreign powers, of course, uncertainty. His killing now removes the last symbolic link to Gaddafi's era. The Gaddafi story is not just about one man or one family. It's about how power was built, how it collapsed, and how its absence reshaped Libya. Muammar Gaddafi ruled for 42 years. His son tried to inherit history. Both were overtaken by events. Both are dead. Libya today remains divided, still living with the consequences of the fall of Gaddafi. Thank you all for watching. It's been an interesting morning. Thank you, Guy, again for your support. I look forward to continuing this coverage and keep you all updated as this thing continues. Thank you so much.